Okay, so to those who are not familiar or initiated with the individual's work, who are not familiar with this album, it's very easy for one to, okay, impressive, acclaimed album, give me all you got, and just being like, what are with all the weird choices made on this album? How can this be a masterpiece? This is terrible. Go in and accept it for what it is, and the end result is one of the most fascinating works in the history of this particular format, in my opinion. I adore this. This is one of my favourite works of art in the 21st century, certainly 2010s. I'm bowled over by this release. I think it's gorgeous, and I'm convinced that this megalomaniac, jackass piece of sometimes piece of garbage jerk-off is an artistic genius. Everything that came together on this album, the end result, is, I think, other than Graduation at least, my favourite work in the discography so far. And it's been one of the most interesting discographies of the 21st century, undeniably. He has cared about making each album a distinct, beautiful, interesting work. And it's a tradition that you could arguably say, a lot of people probably consider this beginning of the Beatles. I remember a period when every single Miles Davis album is a unique and interesting thing. I suspect he was conscious of it. I wouldn't be surprised at all anyway. And now with West, a few other artists in hip-hop have a discography to match West's in general. He's always had the resources to stay on top of the game and on top of technology, on top of all of the trends, and he manifests everything that's going on in culture right now into this one apotheosis of a work. In this case, every single one of his studio albums, I think, has been interesting in one way or the other. Forgive my hubris, but here goes. You know how it got to a point where a certain individual was so adulated, so celebrated, and because of this, they were so on top of everything that was going on in the discourse of their particular field/medium, and so they were always inherently, anything they thought and did was interesting. They always had something fascinating to say, partly because they revolutionized the medium so much, and it was always guaranteed that they would have something interesting to say about it, some fascinating, brilliant, insightful, kind of sobering and empowering take on the medium. That's Goddard in the context of film. Was Goddard, I have to say. And yes, why I said forgive my hubris is I would compare Kanye West to this archetype in the world of hip hop, but also in the world of celebrity in general. Who is more talked about in the media than Kanye West? For his antics, and because, like with perhaps a figure like Michael Jackson before Kanye, the media love his eccentricities and they want to double down on creating this pathos so that they can continually write stories about it. And now this relationship persisted between Michael Jackson and the media, wherein he couldn't unsee himself from their eyes, and they wanted to kind of uncover him, but they didn't realize, or perhaps did and were conscious of it, that they were creating him. They were permutating him. And then the same thing I think is happening with Kanye West. It's influencing his music as much as what his behavior is influencing how they feel about him and how they write about him. Remember that episode of South Park where they basically photographed Britney Spears to death and she blew her brains out, and then the media was still going, "What's Britney doing now?" I find it interesting, the relationship between celebrity/artist and media. It's kind of frightening. It makes for some fascinating work sometimes, but I don't know, it's not you sometimes you're fascinated by the suffering that an artist has gone through, be it for a breakup or through an addiction or some other miscellaneous, someone passing away, and you love the music that came from it. You wouldn't change it for anything, but you take for granted that there was an individual who suffered as a result of that, and you're kind of you're talking about how great it is that song or text or film exists, but it's like you're saying it's great, but that person suffered in a way. It's kind of horrifying when we think about it, and that's how I feel when we praise and talk about how interesting artists like Michael Jackson or Kanye West were with their relationship with the press. It's kind of horrifying when we consider that. And maybe some of the press attention was deserved. Certainly in the case of Kanye, it was just obnoxious behavior throughout the later 2000s and early 2010s before it got really ugly quite recently, unfortunately. But I think to some extent the media was deliberately trying to create that pathos and disturb it further. However, if Kanye West's ferociousness, which is what may have been motivating him this entire time, motivates him further to continually take shots at the media rather than be the artist he might be if they weren't taking shots at him, perhaps the only thing he can do is be the artist he is, considering all of the circumstances, and not if circumstances were more ideal for him, let's say. And can they be more ideal for him? I mean, in a superficial sense, he would argue that circumstances cannot be better for him. There are many who would look up to him and agree. He was married to one of the most desired women and photographed women in the world. However, there was a sense that if he was still creating art, there was clearly some sort of void in his life. Maybe he realizes that when you're in that much of the limelight and when you're with that much of a celebrity kind of residue around you and all of the people you interact with, everything is in the spotlight. You can't just relax and just be yourself. And when you do, what manifests are these vents which are just absolute. This is just free dinners for the media all around. This album, for instance, is full of references to real-life circumstances and how the media has portrayed Kanye West. It's almost as though he can't unsee himself from that social media paradigm of you see yourself as... It's like we realize subconsciously perhaps that what we think of ourselves is one thing, but what really lasts for posterity is how other people perceive us. And so that's why we became so invested with making sure other people thought of us a certain way via social media. That's why they pushed social media on us, because they knew we'd eat it up, because we wanted that. We thought that was realer than real. But it's not real. Like, people would still ultimately, they see someone looking all happy on social media and they ultimately think, that's just a facade. And it's like, yeah, you know what, that person's right. That facade accusation, that's true. That person, deep down, they're not really happy. And that's a nihilistic observation. But it's actually quite empowering and true. And we can get to an equilibrium, a source, wherein potentially it's not really about, one can't control what happens one day no one will be remembered. So maybe the best thing to do is to hope that on your deathbed you can smile and think, yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out. I'm very, very happy and proud of all of that. But being the most famous individual in the world, possibly, with Kanye West, or he may have been married to the most famous individual in the world, rather, it eventually, that attempt at a sheen, it burst open. You try to hold it up so much, and it just eventually collapses, and then you become this raging individualist, and then you're just total pure impulse. And I think that's ultimately what happens when you're such a, I should do this and this and this and this and this. It all overwhelms you, and then all you're left with once the dust settles is, I just want to do whatever I want. And so, but you've built up such a, media colossus around yourself that, when you decide you're going to do whatever you want and you're dismissively just throwing everything around and saying what you want to say, I mean, these things are going to go off balance if you're not considerate, and that media colossus will tumble. And whereas, if an average person does what one does, lives a care, it's one thing, but when the most famous, music artist and recording artist in the world does so, everyone loses their minds. It's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a model lifestyle for everyone. You're not supposed to just be a human being. What is that? In spite of everything nasty he's done, I sincerely wish him nothing but happiness, because I think if he felt happiness, this wouldn't have been a situation, we wouldn't be talking about him in the first place, for better or for worse. We wouldn't get some beautiful art. We wouldn't get some absolute banal and horrifying pathological terrors from this man who's clearly just ill at times. But we also wouldn't have, again, some of the most revolutionary and influential art of the 21st century thus far. And now, with that all out of the way, let's go into the background and the history. Let's read out information on the great free encyclopedia about the life of Pablo, one of the great works of art of this millennium thus far, I could suggest. So, The Life of Pablo is the 7th studio album by American rapper and producer Kanye West. It was released on February 14th, 2016 through Good Music and distributed by Def Jam Recordings. Recording sessions took place from 2013 to 2016 in Italy, Mexico, Canada, and the United States, West and a variety of producers, including co-executive producers Rick Rubin and Noah Goldstein, handled production. West enlisted guest vocals for the album from The Dream, Kelly Price, Chance the Rapper, Kirk Franklin, Kid Cudi, Designer, Rihanna, Young Thug, Chris Brown, The Weeknd, Ty Dolla $ign, Vic Mensa, Sia, Frank Ocean, Kendrick Lamar, Post Malone, and Sampha. Several promotional singles preceded the release of The Life of Pablo, including the tracks Real Friends and No More Parties in LA. During the months before its release, the album's title and track list went through several publicized changes. West premiered an early version at Madison Square Garden on February 11, 2016 as part of his Yeezy Season 3 fashion show. After several additional sessions and alterations, the exclusive launch occurred for streaming on Tidal 3 days later. Following its official streaming debut, West continued to make changes to The Life of Pablo. A largely updated version of it, including alternate mixes and other changes, was made available on other streaming services and for digital purchase on his website on April 1st, 2016. The singles Famous, the two-part Father Stretch My Hands, and Fade were released to support it in 2016. The album received generally positive reviews from music critics, with particular attention being paid to the fragmented, unfinished nature of the composition and release. Multiple publications named it one of 2016's best albums. Jumping ahead a little bit here, in November 2013, Kanye West began working on his 7th studio album, with the working title of So Help Me God intended for a 2014 release date. Q-Tip announced he and Rick Rubin, one of the executive producers of West's 6th studio album Yeezus 2013, would produce the album. Early recording sessions resulted in several tracks released as standalone singles or given to other artists, including West's Paul McCartney collaborations All Day, Only One, and the McCartney and Rihanna collaboration 4-5 Seconds. In 2015, West announced the album's new title as Swish, though he noted the title could change. West announced in January 2016 that Swish would be released on February 11th. He released a new song, Real Friends, that month simultaneously with a snippet of No More Parties in LA. This signified a revival of the Good Fridays initiative, where West had released new singles every Friday. On January 26, 2016, West revealed that he had renamed the album Waves. The track Famous, featuring vocals by frequent West collaborator Rihanna and American hip-hop recording artist Swizz Beatz, was scrutinized on social media for its controversial lyrical reference to American singer Taylor Swift because West had interrupted her acceptance speech at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards. On February 9, 2016, several days ahead of its release, West changed the title to The Life of Pablo. On February 11, West premiered an early version of the album at Madison Square Garden during the presentation of his Yeezy Season 3 clothing line. Following the preview, West announced he would modify the track list again before its public release. He delayed the release further to finalize the recording of the track Waves at the behest of co-writer Chance the Rapper. The track listing I'm familiar with, just to be clear, is the one of 20 tracks which ends with St. Pablo. I know some of them, I believe the initial track list ended with Fade, rather, and didn't have... I don't know for certain, honestly. I have no clue. I may have at one time and I've forgotten since, though. The Life of Pablo was recorded between 2013 and 2016, though recording for the track No More Parties in LA started in 2010 during the sessions for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Ty Dolla $ign reported that writing and recording for the album took place in Mexico in September 2014. He recalled McCartney and Rihanna were present. American rappers Pusha T and Consequence confirmed that they had ended their feud to work with West on music to be released by him. In April 2014, during an interview with self-titled, English electronic music producer Evian Christ explained that despite West not always being musically clear, he just seemed interested in pushing aesthetic boundaries as far into the avant as possible. He will say if this is not experimental enough, this is too poppy, make something else. This can confuse other musicians. Christ said that West is a dream to work with, adding that when it comes to creative freedom, West is on his own level in terms of the freedom. He explained he wants you to work to a blueprint. The blueprint is, don't make a rap beat, anything but a rap beat. In February 2015, while West was continuing work on The Life of Pablo, he confirmed the album was around 80% complete. In March 2015, during an interview with MTV, promoting his third studio album Dark Sky Paradise 2015, Big Sean spoke about the multiple recording locations involved in The Life of Pablo, including Mexico and Hawaii. In an October 2015 interview with The Fader, Post Malone, terrible artist, but that's beside the point a little, who is featured on the track Fade with Ty Dolla $ign, discussed his experiences of West, describing him as just a normal guy like me and super cool. Post Malone isn't a normal guy, he's an aberration in the history of human art, but that's besides the point. On January 27th, 2016, West revealed the update of the final track listing for The Life of Pablo on his official Twitter account. The updated track listing included a number of unannounced potential collaborators: Earl Sweatshirt, The Dream, Tyler, the Creator, the world-famous Tony Williams, Diddy, Danny, A$AP Rocky, Kid Cudi, Lil Uzi Vert, Drake, Tiana Taylor, Zoe Kravitz, Bibi Borelli, Dougie Fresh, How to Dress Well, and French Montana, as well as the return of his frequent production collaborators such as Mike Dean, Hudson Mohawk, Plain Pat, Vicious, Anthony Killoffer, A-Track, and Noah Goldstein. Following the album's premiere at Madison Square Garden, it was revealed that Brooklyn-based rapper Designer contributed vocals to Part 2 and Freestyle 4. I'm not going to get into the whole thing of the post-release updates. Point is, I think we're at the point where the album's basically considered finished now. I mean, essentially, someone update me if this isn't the case. I don't know. The Life of Pablo is noted by Entertainment Weekly's Madison Vane. Do they have worthwhile criticism, that mag? I don't know. For its raw, occasionally even intentionally messy composition in contrast to West's previous albums. Compared to his pre-Yeezus work, Robert Yanis Jr. of Cheat Sheet viewed the album as West taking on a sound that is not as accessible and more self-indulgent. Rolling Stone's Rob Sheffield wrote that The Life of Pablo sounds messy, though he expressed the feeling the sound is purposeful to follow on from the laser-sharp intensity of Yeezus, saying the album is designed to sound like a work in progress. Carl Wilson of Slate suggested that, with the given context of the sonic landscaping throughout The Life of Pablo, the point is that, in West's kamikaze mood-swinging way, Pablo now seems undeniably, not half-assedly, as I'd been about to conclude, like an album of struggle, noting the strange connections that it created between Kanye's many iterations: soul sample enthusiast, heartbroken auto-tuned crooner, hedonistic avant-pop composer, industrial rap shit-talker, while making use of bass and percussion lines that are only the tail-end decay of some lost starting place, some vanished rhythmic Eden. Writing for the Daily Telegraph, Neil McCormick claimed the album sounds like abstract hip-hop work and noted the somewhat disjointed sound, while Pretty Much Amazing critic Nathan Wisnicki noted occasional elements of hyperactive, progressive hip-hop. West described the music on The Life of Pablo as the gospel according to Ye, explaining that his gospel differs somewhat from what happened in the Bible, but it's this story idea of Mary Magdalene becoming Mary. Corbin Reeve of the AV Club claimed the album only works as a gospel record if, as a listener, you worship at his altar. Madison Vane described The Life of Pablo as a gospel album. In Uprock, Stephen Hayden dubbed the album as West's ecstatically bleary gospel rap excursion. Gavin Haynes of NME described The Life of Pablo as the point where West suddenly changes direction from futuristic beats on the likes of Feedback to bog-standard modern trap, with Haynes citing Designer's vocals on Part 2 as an example of the latter, while he noted West took on the direction of vintage soul on Ultralight Beam. Chance the Rapper and his instrumental collaborator Donnie Trumpet bring elements of soul revivalism into the track during Chance the Rapper's guest verse. Greg Cott of the Chicago Tribune contrasted Chance the Rapper's gospel-informed hip-hop tracks with West's take on that tradition, claiming the version of gospel provided by West includes some of those sonic cues, heavy organs, soaring choirs. However, Cott concluded by describing West as more preoccupied with gospel text and the notion of redemption. Ultralight Beam in particular has been described as featuring several gospel elements, including the sound of a 4-year-old preaching gospel, some organ, as well as a church choir singing the refrain of "This is a God Dream." Gospel elements similar to those of the song are included in Lowlights, adding to the general gospel theme. Father Stretch My Hands Part 1 was described as gospel music in its composition. Ray Rahman of Entertainment Weekly noted the album's frequent meditations on matters of faith, family, and West's own role as a cultural figure, while observing that Pablo frequently, some might say abruptly, toggles between sad Kanye and the bombastic and celebratory Kanye. McCormick described West as constantly veering between swaggering bravado and insecurity bordering on paranoia, smashing the sacred against the profane and disrupting his own flowing grooves of interjections. That's not dissimilar to how he was in The College Dropout when you think about it. Listen to that again. Come on, guys. He claimed the interjections sound as if they are spilling over from another studio altogether. Referencing West's lyrical performance, Sheffield wrote that he knows he's got some issues to work on. The Life of Pablo features gloomy, doomy discussions of trust issues, antidepressants, and familial problems on tracks such as FML and Real Friends. Chance the Rapper explained certain lyrics on his Ultralight Beam verse are a reference to his own leadership of all other artists towards independence and freedom. The song itself is focused around West's faith in God. Miles Raymer of GQ wrote that Father Stretch My Hands Part 1 is a gospel song about fucking models, and described it as transitioning into a soul-bearing confessional dance track in Part 2, which includes 2 entire verses of an entirely different song about drug dealing and cars from Designer. while with his single Panda being sampled. Raymond noted that after design as vocals, the song resolves into a meditative piece of vocoder from contemporary classical composer Caroline Shaw. The song Famous includes the controversial lyric, "I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why? I made that bitch famous." The lyric refers to West interrupting Taylor Swift's acceptance speech at the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards. This was heavily publicized, and many publications and viewers criticized West. Cott called the song an example of just how brilliant and infuriating West can be at the same time. Green wrote that the lyric feels like a piece of bathroom graffiti, thought its intention is to reignite the most racially charged rivalry in 21st century pop. Throughout the song, West references the fame and wealth that he's gathered during his career, and he also showcases braggadocio. Feedback features West responding to his critics of the lyric, "Name one genius that ain't crazy to do so." Raymer wrote the lyric is confirming the two frequent major criticisms of West, that he's an egomaniac and that he's mentally unwell. God and his connection to spirituality are referenced within Lowlights, with the vocals coming from an unknown woman delivering a sample of Sandy Rivera's performance on the a cappella version of Save Me by the duo Kings of Tomorrow. West raps about the newfound fame and fortune in his life after marrying Kim Kardashian in Highlights. West uses sexually explicit lyrics to describe his fantasies and dreams on Freestyle 4. The interlude I Love Kanye features a self-aware a cappella lyrics referencing West's changing public image. The track Waves is uplifting, including braggadocious lyrics mixed with those of a darker tone that reference death or the ending of relationships. Within FML, West raps about maintaining his loyalty to Kardashian, and the title stands for Fuck My Life as well as For My Lady, as both phrases are mentioned in the song. Raymond claimed that the lyric, "You ain't never seen nothing crazier than this N-word," I'm not saying it out loud here, when he off his Lexapro, is confirmation of West's major sources of criticism. Lexapro, that's an SSRI, if for those who don't know. West touches on trust issues with his family on Real Friends, which includes lyrics about a cousin blackmailing him. West shows fears of possibly being viewed as a guilt-ridden son on Wolves. The song features the lyrics, "Carvanorian lamb's wool, we surrounded by the fucking wolves," used by West to offer an image of him and Kardashian as the biblical figures Mary and Joseph. The interlude Frank's track consists of Frank Ocean crooning depressing and dark lyrics. American rapper Max B delivers a voicemail about good vibes on Silver Surfer Intermission, which is followed by fellow rapper French Montana blurting out the phrase Silver Surfer repeatedly on the interlude until the phrase is repeated by Max B. The song 30 Hours includes West delivering the real-life commentary that he has become known for. West unapologetically declares his greatness in No More Parties in LA, while fellow rapper Kendrick Lamar adds to the backdrop of the song. Facts Charlie Heat version is a Nike diss track that references West bragging about the success of his Yeezy shoes. Forrest Wickman from Slate wrote that Fade is where West, R&B singer-songwriter Ty Dolla $ign and White Iverson singer Post Malone alternate verses, with Wickman viewing the lyrics as being centered on trying to hold on to a love that's fading. West raps in a self-reflective way on St. Pablo, which also includes him rapping with political edge, humor, and a logically clear through line. Right now, few albums get me as excited when they begin than The Life of Pablo, opening up with Ultralight Beam. We're on an ultralight beam, we're on an ultralight beam. This is a God dream, this is a God dream. This is everything. This is everything. Such beautiful optimism to emanate from such a specific and distinct individual, and one you would never expect it to come from given the media profiling of them. But it's so beautiful, they choose very willingly to ignore all of the context about the individual and choose simply to appreciate the art. That's how brilliant he is, and I think that's why he is worth the attention, or at least the art is, I could say. But I wish him, and all of you, the best. Thanks for listening if you have, and I hope you all have the best possible day, night you have ever imagined. Remember, we're on an ultralight beam, this is the God dream, this is everything. This is everything. Alleluia.